Hi, everyone. This is Dr. Aijaz Qureshi from Toronto, Canada, with today's episode of the Daydreamers Show. Today, we have a very interesting topic, a futuristic topic about the future of work and technology 20, 30 years from now, maybe more. How would it look like? How would people work? How the technology will behave, or how will it take shape? Our esteemed guest today is Jerome C. Glenn. He is a Journal Global Futurist, co-author of the book of State of the Future from Washington, D.C., United States of America. He's involved in the future work, technology, and how the cultural change in cultural arts or media can take into improving the transition of changing work and technology dynamics by 2050 or 2060. How would it look like? And how it would be beneficial to everyone, to all in a possible way. He's also part of the Millennium Project that conducted extensive research on several international real-time Delphis to produce three work technology 2050 global scenarios. These scenarios were input into the national workshop in 19 countries, 19 countries, viewers, to identify strategies to address some of the issues raised. He is also involved in the sharing views. He collects views from different people. Let's welcome to the show, Jerome C. Glenn. Jerome, welcome to the show.
Hello, nice to be here.
I know that this thing is going in the background, so viewers, please forgive us for this technical glitch. Sometimes it happens. I hope you understand. It's a world of internet. It's a world of future we are going to talk about. So all these things, we have to have patience to really deal with these things. So,
Right.
all right. So I did your introduction, but I'm not sure how comprehensive it is. It's a very brief. I know you're doing so many different things, Jerome. I'm really, really impressed. I had a chance to go through the chapter of your book. It's really amazing how in depth discussion took place in that only one chapter, and I love to really read the entire book. I can't really wait to read the entire book, and it's a great effort. So Millennium Project is really doing great. Would you like to share more information about yourself? How did you get here where you are today?
Well, I've been doing futures research in one way or another for almost 45 years now. Um, I was a master's degree student in the United States, and the state of Vermont asked me, along with some others, to learn futures methodologies and apply them to the state of Vermont for the future of education, which we did. And it dawned on me in the process that these methods of futurists, cross-impact analysis and Delphis, like you've mentioned, and other kinds of methods, are ways to take a lot of diverse information and compress it and analyze it to making better decisions or a framework in which to make better decisions. And I said, well, Chuck, such son of a gun, they should be used in education. Like one technique is called a cross-impact analysis. So imagine you're teaching biology. So you say, okay, you take the rest, cross impact. What you do is on one column you list all a bunch of things, whether it's technologies or ideas, whatever, and the same list across the top. You say, if thing number one happens, how does that affect thing number two? All right. So in biology, you could say, how does a respiratory system affect the circulatory system? How does the respiratory system affect the skeletal system, etc.? So by using a futurist method, you learn the interdependency of the human body on one chart. So I said, this is brilliant. So I started running around the United States doing this. And then from one thing led to the next. And then I got some offers from different think tanks, and things evolved from there. And then eventually a major futurist, Theodore Gordon, who was part of the early RAND Corporation, first think tank in the United States, and gave us the third stage, the Apollo rocket, because he was the manager for that. So when someone says it doesn't take rocket science, we say yes, and there he is. But he and I created the Millennium Project together as a global system to do global futures research, because we've had all these studies on the future of this and future of that, and they sit on people's shelves, and you have great cocktail parties and great applauses, but nothing happens. So we thought we needed a system for humans to think together systematically about the future. So that's what brought me to here.
Awesome. That's great. So I've been reading a lot about what's going on in the world of technology. I think the tech is going to drive the future, as you have mentioned in your book. Um, and everything is leading towards that, and I think it's really complementing and supplementing human beings. But again, there are questions that will machines take over humans in future? And I always ask, I mean, whenever I have a futurist or an expert in IT and AI and machine learning, robotics and things like that, I definitely ask this question. So the question is, according to you as a general
Yeah.
futurist, do you think the machines will take over humankind?
Well, let me ask you a question back. Have your glasses taken you over?
No,
But they took over your eyesight.
no, actually, they complimented me.
Ah, okay. So one alternative future or one set of things is that all this technology, all these robots, all this artificial intelligence will augment us, make us better, like these little earphones I'm using and your glasses. That's one part of it.
Right,
Absolutely true. However, you can now, a microscope also didn't take over your mind, but now we got electron microscopes, very fancy ones that you can actually sit back and you're not even there, and it's doing a different job. So, yes, some of this stuff will replace jobs. Absolutely true. Some of this will augment us. Absolutely true. And some of us will say, I want to be a natural, I want to go off the grid, I want to live, independent of all this stuff. And they'll do that too. So that's why we have a lot of alternative futures, a lot of different things. One of the things that I have learned in all these years of futures research is whatever you look at, assume it will become more complex than you think is reasonable, and then double it, and you
oh,
get closer to what happens. I mean, look at how complex the world is today compared to for your grandparents.
oh yeah,
How
it is
simple life was. Now, your grandchildren, how complex is it going to be for them? A
true.
baby born today is likely to see the year 2100. What's that going to be like? A lot more complex. So the short answer to your question is all of the above. Technology will replace some jobs, yes. It'll augment some jobs, yes. It'll do all those above. But that's why we're doing these studies. How do we get the best results out of it rather than just blindly walking into the future?
Yeah, no, I agree. And especially, when we come to the workforce and technology replacing human beings, yes, it does, as you said. But again, on the other hand, let's look at the other side. It creates new opportunities for people. New learning is there, new technologies, new jobs are created.
Right.
Uh, you know, um, Now I see brand new jobs that didn't exist 20 years ago, 10 years ago. And,
Right.
and now we have those jobs and people are really, really thriving in those jobs. So, yeah, absolutely. So, in terms of uh, the synthetic world of things and genetically modified stuff, we all see that in the food
Yeah.
industry. We have GMO, things like that. Some people like it. Some people don't like it. Some people are going back to organic and those kind of things, especially the producers. They like the GMO because it gives them more capability and capacity and things like that. Synthetic biology is really, really playing hard in terms of, or contributing a lot in terms of the genetically modifying the stuff. So, do you think the novel artificial biological pathways will help the humankind in future in 2050, 2060 that you're talking about?
Okay. I want to make a real hard distinction between two things that gets confused a lot. Synthetic biology is not genetic engineering like CRISPR-9. That's where you take a DNA, you knock something else out, and you put something else in. So it's a genetically modified organism. So it's still corn, but it's corn that can handle less water or whatever. That's what's going on now. Synthetic biology is not that.
Okay,
Synthetic
sorry.
biology.
So, sorry about I,
Right.
I
No, no,
kind of
no.
mixed
But
it. I thought it is
yeah, but
pretty.
this is for your audience. This is for your audience to make the distinction. Synthetic biology is where you sit in front of a computer and you say, I want an organism or a food or a medicine or whatever it is that has these properties. And then you search databases to find out what genes have that capability. And then you mess around putting together on your screen various combinations to see what will eventually work. And then when you find out this is the new steam that works, you may have some genetic material from algae. You might have some genetic material from a hawk. You may have a genetic material from a human. You may have it from an oak tree. And that makes a completely new DNA synthesis that's never been there before. Now, asking about this is good or bad. Let me jump into that. Just like nuclear energy in a submarine with proper controls can go all underneath the sea and go take all care of all kinds of stuff, and it can also blow up the world. So synthetic biology is potentially one of the greatest threats of the world. It is also one of the greatest saviors of the world. Think of all the things that nature can do that you can't do. Quite a lot. Separating hydrogen from oxygen without heat. That's pretty cool. We don't know how to do that. A plant does that all the time. That's molecular manufacturing and so forth. Now,
Gotcha.
we may be able to make weapons out of this stuff, and that's a real problem because with a nuclear, you can project because of weather patterns how the fallout goes. Whereas with genetics, that's a different deal. We want to study right now. One of the things that Millennium Project is looking at is we would like to do a study of how the family and the community helps humans grow up more healthily so that no one goes wacko enough to make a synthetic biological weapon. This is a serious deal. There's technical means to prevent it, but that's classified military stuff. I'm not dealing with that, but that's one part of it. Another is we're learning a lot about mental health, about cognitive science. So let's make more people more healthy, and we should be doing that anyway. But it's also important for the future. And then the third part is what's the role of the public? Because in the Cold War, the public had no role other than paying taxes, right? On this one, the public has a role. Matter of fact, the public is the front line.
That's right.
On this.
Yeah. So talking about synthetic biology and doing all this research, putting things together, there are different approaches to really come up to results. There's bottom-up synthetic biology. There is top-down synthetic biology. What do you think the metabolic and genetic engineering techniques in terms of the top-down synthetic biology research?
Well, certainly the one you started to allude to before is food. We could make locally produced food with this stuff. So you wouldn't have to put stuff in a ship and send it across the Pacific Ocean using a lot of oil. And you'd have different standards in different countries. And then you get protests like in South Korea against American meat. Or we could also learn how to go from genetic material to make a healthier meat than we have today, even. Right now, a lot of our meat, as you may know, your audience may know, more pharmaceuticals are used on animals that humans eat than humans using it to make themselves healthy. That's crazy, you know?
Yes.
So if we can take pure genetic material to make pure meat, and then maybe along the way add it in such a way that it actually makes you healthier. So like you may need a certain amount of substance for your liver. I might need another substance for my old brain to work better. So we actually could merge food and medicine potentially. So
yeah, protein engineering is one of them as well that we can work on, right?
Yes.
We can invent all different kinds of things, and as you said, especially the crops. The crops are dependent on different aspects like soil, the weather, all those kind of things, and that's the reason that in some areas of the world, some crops are in abundance, some where they are not, just because of the weather,
right.
the non-permitting factors. So synthetic biology probably can help us in terms of creating a model which sustains itself in different conditions all over the
Yeah.
world. You don't have to ship it. So
yeah, and we may be able to have little kits eventually,
yeah,
just like people on yogurt. Like yogurt, you make it locally,
right,
but you got to have a starter kit to begin with. So
right,
we might be able to have in the future starter kits to make our own protein, our own vegetable material, so that we can have locally produced fresh material right in our own home eventually.
right, right. Now, switching gears,
Mhm.
Jerome, towards the
Mhm.
quantum technology, and quantum has
Yeah.
really played a big role in terms of quantum computing and quantum physics and quantum mind sciences. Quantum is getting in everywhere, you know. So, in terms of the quantum biology,
Mhm.
what applications of quantum biology do you see in future in 2050, 2060 onward?
I don't know. Because as you well know,
It might be a stupid
quantum
question,
is
so
such a
sorry about
weird quantum physics is such a strange, weird thing. You can almost infer anything from it.
that. Exactly.
So like what's going to happen? I probably stuff I have no idea. I mean, we will probably have new life forms. Like we did scenarios years ago when the year 2000 came up. A lot of people looking back 1,000 years, and so we figured as futures we got to look out 1,000 years. So we did 1,000-year scenarios. We did six
Yeah.
of them, and one of them was speciation, where the human goes into a variety of different kinds of species, and one is like these nanites, and this is where your quantum biology comes in. That you're living in many worlds simultaneously and collaborating in many different ways. I mean, this is so bizarre. I'm stuttering.
But it's really interesting when you read
Yes.
things about this and what amazing things are happening. It's really mind
Yes.
blowing. My mind really blows away that.
Right. Well, as your audience may or may not know, we've been updating these State of the Future reports for 20 years, and quantum computing is one of the things we look at and updating. And from my poor, limited brain, every year it goes a little faster than I expected.
Oh yeah,
So quantum computing. Now, here's one to consider. So quantum computing may, of course, there's you in Canada have D-Wave, right?
that's
You're
right.
already selling a damn or something. Sorry, you're already selling one of them, right? So anyway, so let's say that quantum computing in the cloud. Imagine in the cloud, the average person
Yeah,
having access to quantum computing in the cloud. And then
in the
imagine we go from artificial narrow intelligence like we have right now to artificial general intelligence, which we may or may not have. But if we do, then imagine a human has access to quantum computing of artificial general intelligence.
oh yeah,
And imagine the two of them like a synergy influencing each other in like a yin yang sort of a way. That's beyond all right, for example, to get a sense of how far beyond, when we were doing our first computer programming, you probably the 1970s, me the 1970s, little stuff, little link in
yeah,
the upper left-hand corner, right? If
that's
somebody
right.
said, if somebody said to you, billions of people, not millions, but billions of people would search trillions of computer pages in less than 1 second and arrange it just for you and arrange it differently for another person and cost you nothing, and
Yeah,
another billion people would do it again the next second. You'd
that's
say,
right.
I don't think so. I don't think so. That's a little too difficult.
Agreed.
But
Yeah,
here we are. From the time we wrote our first line of code to the time that that statement is true is within our lifetime.
absolutely.
And if the rate of change is accelerating, then that far outness is going to seem slow compared to the future far outness.
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I still remember my first program that I wrote in assembly language. All I wrote was poke and peek into registers. Poke and peek, poke and peek. I mean, just
Right.
imagine how hard it was. And now I can develop the entire fully functional website, which is responsive, that runs on laptops, desktops, tablets, smartphones, any operating system. Point and click, drag and drop, no coding, not a single line
Yeah.
of code. I mean,
Yeah.
amazing, amazing, amazing. So, last question to you, Jerome, is Do you see that the energy can be converted into a form which will transform the energy into different things, like whatever energy it is heat energy, or it is the wind or oil or whatever. Do you think any transformations happening into those energies, or they will remain the same in 2050?
Uh, the very fact that you could ask that question. I mean, imagine when you were taking physics in high school, you could not have asked that question.
No, not at all.
Right? I want your audience to really appreciate the amount of changes going on. The idea as a matter of fact, as you well know, the distinction between matter and energy is sort of like very superficial, literally superficial in a physics sense. It's literally superficial. So, as they say in financial circles, money is fungible from one system to another. Absolutely. I see nothing preventing that. And every time we look in physics, we find more than less. So the very fact that you could ask that question tells me, yes, we will morph, if I can use that, we'll morph from one kind of energy system to another kind of energy system. And if the many worlds theory is correct, the quantum, the idea of many, we can do this through different worlds. I mean, I remember there's a guy named George Cowan who unfortunately passed away. He was part of the early atomic bomb business, and he was part of the starting Santa Fe Institute and one of the quiet brains in the United States. And I would meet him every so often, and I'd say, how are we doing on the many worlds theory? Is it still going on? Is it going backward, going forward? And every time it was going forward. I mean, it's bizarre stuff, but the evidence keeps going in that direction. Yeah.
Great. Awesome. Yeah, I love to see that happening because I think all these, wars and all these kind of things happening, they all are happening because of the energy. There is a certain energy available in certain part of the world, and, people want to take over, and all those kind of things are happening. And if, different ways of converting different energies into different things, morphing, as you said, morph is a great word.
Yeah.
Will human beings be ever, you think, morphed into something else?
Yeah. Life, as you know, everybody knows, it sort of adapts to its environment. Life came out of the oceans supposedly and went onto the land, and now we got birds, and now we're looking at space development. As a matter of fact, there's a discussion group I'm monitoring at the moment. Is gravity like a vitamin, in the sense you got to have certain vitamins to make your body work right? Because we evolved in gravity, we've never really been out of it long. We had these guys up in space running around and exercising and so forth, but it's a short-term deal. What if you're born in space and you grow up? How would your body change? How it ought to change? How does it adapt to a gravity-free environment? I think that humans will be augmented geniuses if they want to. Like, I'm augmented hearing right now, and you're augmented with your glasses. We could be augmented geniuses. Why couldn't we be? I mean, if you had like contact lens, Elon Musk is working on this, as you know, right now with Neuralink. But there's also the contact lens version, so if I took an IQ test and I'm looking down at the screen or the test, and is picking up the words and coming up with the answers, why wouldn't I just simply check all the correct answers? Well, by the rules of the IQ game, I got 100%. Well, I am a blankety blank genius. Right? Well, I'm not biologically a genius, but I'm an augmented genius. So if it's reasonable to assume that anybody by 2050 could have access to being an augmented genius, what's the world like when potentially the majority of people are augmented geniuses? You didn't need too many geniuses in the agricultural age. If you did, you'd have a revolution. You need some more in the industrial age and some more in the information age. But in the future, what happens if most of the people are augmented geniuses?
Right.
So that's still a human being, but it's not the same as the person says, I'm out of here. I'm going to leave the grid. I'm going to be nature. I'm going to protect the human genome. Right? That's different. And then the space adapted creatures. I wouldn't be a bit surprised. When's the first kid going to be born in space?
Yeah.
Don't know. Yeah.
Don't know.
And how will that species be different? As you know, how you see color underwater is different than how you see color in the air. How you see color in space is different than how you see it in the air. When you grow up in a different environment, your brain is going to affect a little differently. That's going to feed back in your biological system. So will post-human, post-terrestrials be a beginning of a speciation of another? I would say sure.
Right, right. We have a question. Let me bring it up on the screen. It will take up your face, but I'm gonna. Sorry about that, Jerome. I'm gonna bring it anyways. So the viewer is Irshad Ali John. He's saying, "Hello, Jerome. A very informative session going. What would you suggest for youngsters who want to join the information technology as a career? What is your expert advice for them to have a successful career in terms of the information technology?"
Okay, one of the things I suggest you do is you keep a little file off to the side, and you make guesses about what you think the information technology is going to do next year, and maybe 5 years, and then maybe 10. So 1 year from now, then you go back and see which ones were you right and which ones were you wrong. Why were you right? And when you were wrong, how do I change my assumptions? Because one of the ways you get smarter is you change your assumptions. You change your models when you're wrong. Right? So in a sense, you're teaching yourself to think ahead of information technology. So that's one way to do this. Another way to do this is figure out who knows the most and how do you keep track of them, and what do they keep track of, and try to keep track of that. So you're trying to keep ahead of the conversation like this. And then learn different methods as you go along. It's always good to have your fingers on the keys or your voice in the voice activation, but get the experience, get taste, touch, and feel, not just intellectual. And a third or fourth thing would be to say is keep track of what turns you on, because you'll be able to make a living on what turns you on. In the past, the market was there, and everybody revolved around the market. In the future, and now to some degree, half the world is surrounded by half the world. Like, we're on a show that can broadcast anybody in the world, and that doesn't mean everybody gets it, but potentially it's there. So you're the center of a market of information. So every individual is like that. So you can start to figure out, what are your hobbies, what are your interests, what are your passions, and start to find out who in the world is interested in that, so that as you grow over and you want to sort of evolve as a self-actualization person, you're connecting to people so that you might want to charge them some little thing. Like, let's say if I'm in Washington, D.C., I'm going to go to maybe the Smithsonian Institution. I could say, who wants to go to the Smithsonian Institution with me electronically, video-wise? So while I'm there, I put on my little camera, my glasses. So I'm charging them maybe like €1. And maybe there's 50 people in the whole world want to go through the Smithsonian Institution with me. Okay, so that's €50. That pays for a very nice lunch.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it costs that much over there. I know. I've been there. Just a bottle of water, like a small bottle, like not the one that we get here in North America. Like a very small one costs like €3, €3.50. Yeah, I and over there, the bartender will not give you the water out of the tap until you buy something. Very interesting phenomena.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. So, any message for the world you want to give out, Jerome? Anything you want to say?
Yeah. Well, what I'd like to say is, if you go to our website, which is Millennium with 2 L's and 2 N's, we spell it sort of the English way rather than the Latin way, millennium-project.org. And then you go down, scroll down a little bit, and you'll see current activities. And one of those current activities is what we were talking about, this future work and technology stuff. And you can click on this 3 scenarios, and I would say read them. And reading them in one sitting is tough. So read stop, take notes, whatever, and then come back later on. But read all three, not just one, all three, because then you get a context of the possibilities. And then if you want to play and add your views, there's in that same area on the website, you can click on different questionnaires and you can put in your views, and we'd be happy to hear from you. One of the things that I've learned is you always have to have a back door for the unknown, because Bucky Fuller, remember Buckminster Fuller? With the geodesic dome, synergies, doing more with less. He wouldn't have been qualified for the normal professional future society stuff, and yet he was one of the greatest futurists. Take Benjamin Franklin, wouldn't have been qualified for the regular future stuff. So we always want to have a back door open. So I'm inviting you to go through the back door.
Awesome. Great. Well, thank you so much, Jerome. I really appreciate your effort and your time that you're giving out to the Millennium Project, especially today on behalf of the Dreams Television, the Daydreamers Show, myself, all the viewers who have watched this show live here or will be watching recording because of their time zones difference and things like that. Thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your thoughts.
Thank you for having me. Salam.
Thank you. All right, viewers, that was Jerome C. Glenn, General Futurist. Awesome person. Please do follow his website, and you can click on his name on this post and try to follow him. He's doing amazing, wonderful work. Thank you so much. Until next time, this is Dr. Aijaz Qureshi saying goodbye from the Daydreamers Show. Take care.